So we're up to Numbers chapter 19, verse 3. It says, so we're talking about the red heifer, and you're going to take this red heifer, and what do you do? Natatamu to Elazar Kohen. This is the only time in the Torah where there's a specific commandment to do something not for the Kohen Gadol or not for regular Kohen, but for the assistant Kohen, which is called a deputy. Natatamu to Elazar Kohen. The mitzvah to be done by the deputy.
I just got into the beginning of the chapter, 8:44.
Chapter 19, verse 3. So this is the only procedure which has to be done under supervision of the deputy. Rashi says, mitzvah b'skan. There's a dispute in the Talmud. There's a dispute in the Talmud whether or not it was only this mitzvah that was done by, it was only this red heifer which was done by the deputy, or was also all the other red heifers were done by the deputy. But in the Torah, this is the only one that was done specifically by the deputy. Very intriguing. Why is that the case? Why is that the case? Rashi says, mitzvot b'skan. And why is that the case? So, let me see here. Curious if, Rashi says here. Let's see if there's a commentary on the Rashi. I don't see it. Nope, they don't comment on it. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, what does it say there?
We should do it with the only one priest. Although this red heifer was given specifically to Aaron as the deputy priest.
Right.
This is not a general requirement. In fact, apart from this, two other occasions, the rights of the red heifer were performed by the high priest himself.
Well, no, that's with all due respect to the tremendous scholar that Rabbi Steinsaltz is, clearly that he was like abbreviating there for the purpose of space, because it's a dispute in the Talmud whether or not the subsequent ones had to be done for the purpose of by Elazar or under others. So, but I think one of the reasons why maybe it had to be done by the deputy was because Aaron was a little tainted by the golden calf, maybe. V'shachato lefanav, and it al michutz l'machana, and you take this red heifer outside the camp. Chutz l'shalosh machanot. There were three camps. There was the Divine Presence camp, which was the camp, the courtyard of the Mishkan and its courtyard, and there was around that camp, which was called the camp of the Levites, and then there was the camp of the Israelites. So you had to take this outside the three camps. Now, in the time of the temple, it was slaughtered. You know where it was slaughtered? It was slaughtered on Mount Olives. It was not slaughtered in the temple. This is not a sacrifice.
The Mishnah refers to it as the Mount of Anointing. That's in the Steinsaltz.
Yeah, because it's also called Mount Olives and the Mount of Anointing, because you anoint the olive oil. So maybe that's where they anointed the king. But the point was, it was not in the temple. It was on the mountain right opposite the Temple Mount, and you could stand there and look into the temple itself. So that's a second unusual aspect of this red heifer. I don't know if I told you, Ben, when I was in Israel on my last trip, did I tell you that I saw red heifers? Oh, so they're raising red heifers in Israel. They actually made a whole relationship with some evangelical farmer in Texas, and he said he's been waiting for this call his whole life, and they shipped in different red heifers that this breed in Texas, and they've been breeding them and raising them, and they now have several acceptable ones, and they're raising them. I was able to see them. And how are they able to get them into the country? Because it's very strict about bringing in livestock. So they called it, when they brought on the plane, they called it a personal comfort animal.
Did he fly coach? That's good.
So that's actually what happened.
Spiritual comfort.
They called it a pet. What? They called it a pet. They called it a pet. Hold on. Where it is it's in one of the settlements in Shomron. We don't like to talk about it. This is going on the internet, but it's under very tight security because, as you can imagine, there's apocalyptic readings of it. So okay, so v'shachat otah lefanav, and you shall slaughter it in front of him. So this is also unusual. What does it mean that it says he shall slaughter it in front of him? That implies Elazar does not even do the slaughtering, but rather Zar shochet ve'Elazar roeh. The non-Kohen does the slaughtering, and the Kohen himself is who watch, and Elazar is who watches it. So this is highly unusual also. We're told that what does the Kohen do? He's just watching it being slaughtered. He doesn't have to slaughter it directly either. So that's already interesting. That this is being done in a very different manner. And the commentaries seize on this Rashi, and they're wondering why is this being done differently? And so here's one of the commentaries. Why is this slaughter being done differently from all the other slaughterings? That what's unusual here is not only that the non-Kohen watches it, but generally speaking, when you do a slaughter, you don't need anybody standing next to you watching it. So why do we need somebody to watch the slaughtering and also the burning? So the answer is I mean, the answer is not as good as the question. Let's just leave it like that. I see the answer. It's a little technical. But the basic point is we're talking about highly unusual rituals here. That these are unique so far to the red heifer. That the deputy, he just stands there and watches. It's not eaten and it's not sacrificed. Yeah, but it's an interesting question. What if it's not a kosher shlita? It doesn't talk about that here. Yeah, but it doesn't say it. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't say like if it doesn't talk about the beer. Yes, Ben.
Well, this is very interesting. Forgive me if I missed this, if you already said it, but in the Rashi, it says, when it mentions Eleazar the priest, it says, because Aaron had made the king, this should be carried out by him. Okay.
Yeah, but that I said that, but that hasn't been said. What Rashi are you reading there?
This is under
what verse? Because that's later on. Verse 3?
Yeah.
I don't have that in my version. Maybe later on, I think Rashi says that. I think Rashi comes back at the end and says that, but in my version of the Rashi, I don't have that here. Oh yeah, right. No, because what happens is that they go back and Rashi says at the end of his commentary, I've just explained this in accordance with the way it sounds, but now he says I'm going to quote an ancient midrash of Rabbi Moshe Darshan, and this midrash is hello there. And this, by the way, you have the mac and cheese. It's hot. I just took it out of the oven for you. What do you think? Good? Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Did you shut the freezer tight? You sure? Okay. Okay, so in this other version at the end, he cites that that because Aaron made the calf, therefore it was not given to him to be performed. Mm-hmm. The prosecutor does not become a defense counsel. It's better in the Aramaic in katiger nasa senegar, but every time, and it appears a few times in different Rashis. And every time I read that, I was thinking to myself, you haven't practiced law in America where the prosecutor, after they finish their stint in the Department of Justice, goes into the white shoe law firm and gets $2 to $3 million a year. What's the matter? A stint? Yeah. A stint is like a period of time. That's okay. That's okay. No, the Attorney General was not Trump's defense counselor. It was the Attorney General of Florida is the current Attorney General. They might be there in the Justice Department, but the actual Attorney General was the Attorney General of Florida.
I mean, she was de facto a Trump advocate, but you're right.
She was not officially part of. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think she was part of his official defense team because she was the Attorney General of Florida. Not that it matters, because everybody, whatever. Exactly, right? We all know what it means. We all know what's going on. And you don't have to be. But I will say this. I called a friend of mine who I hadn't spoken to in a long time, just to wish him, whatever, connected. He was an ambassador under Obama, and he said he has a radio show now, and he said, so he clearly is a major Democratic donor, and he said that he thinks like Trump is right like half the time. And he said at Columbia, he went to Columbia. And even before Trump started doing this, he said he stopped giving money to Columbia. And he told me a story. He said to me, the whole social work school needs to be shut down because he said there's this term, Ashko-normativity, which is about Ashkenazic Jews. He said they hand out at the entrance to and he said he talked about this on his radio show. When you come to your first day of social work school, they hand out information saying, we have to speak out strongly against Ashko-normativity. And those are oppressors. The Ashko-normativity is the oppressing. And people are born into it. They are the oppressors, like enslaving the rest of us. And he wrote to the school about it. And their response was, that wasn't supposed to be for the public. So the point is, he is horrified about Columbia, and he said that they are and he was a major donor for many years. I know he's a major donor because his son went there, and his son probably got in because he gave a lot of money to it. He'll tell you that and he was disgusted by the anti-Semitism, and he was very disappointed in the lack of response of Biden.
You might want to read the article.
I read that article.
Of course, he says he basically feels as I do. Two things can be true. They can be doing terrible things at Columbia, and a lot of the stuff Trump is doing in response is not necessarily.
Well, Trump is like taking a blunt object to something that requires nuance. But the reality, my opinion, is because the Biden administration didn't do anything, created the political environment where people were calling for a blunt object. I mean, I completely blame Biden and Harris for their for their.
He was born in Colombia.
I mean, I play in Colombia. Colombia was terrible because when you see this, what we were reading in the news, sometimes the news exaggerates. Just the opposite. The news was underreporting. Like this story about the Ashko normativity, like the news was underreporting the extent of the anti-Semitism, the extent of the universities' appeasement of the anti-Semites. So, and when I send this article from Frankfurt to people at Columbia, they said it's very accurate. I mean, so sometimes, you could be accused of saying that what's going on college campuses. Some people say, oh, it's just exaggerated. But it's very clear that what's going on in Columbia is not an exaggeration. In fact, it's underreported. And that the people are hiding their Jewish identity. It's shocking. In a New York, highly Jewish university. And so, anyway, I don't know how we got sidetracked onto that, but the point is he was deeply disturbed by it, and because Colombia didn't do anything and the Bidens didn't do anything, that creates an environment where I'm not excusing taking a blunt instrument, but what do you think is going to happen? That's how politics works. Like there's anyway, so okay, now we're up to the next verse. And Elazar the Kohen shall take from the blood of the red heifer with his finger. And he shall spring it towards the Ol Moed from its blood, Sheva Pamim. 7 times. And this is going, where is this taking place? Right, so this is what I said. Omeid b'mizracho shel Yerushalayim. He'll stand in the gates of the eastern part of Jerusalem. He stands east of Jerusalem. Umiskavein, and aligned himself. Veroa pislo shalecho. You have to be able to look into the entrance of the sanctuary when you sprinkle the blood. So he's standing on that mountain and is able to look in. One of the things that's interesting here is that Rashi in his commentary is shifting from talking about the wilderness times and the Mishkan to Jerusalem and the temple times, just going back and forth seamlessly, and saying that these verses are referring to both. Because this idea of he stands there and sprinkles it towards doesn't really make sense, this explanation in temple and wilderness times, because there was no mountain. The Mishkan was moving around. He wasn't standing on a mountain then. Okay. Now the next verse says, "This arafas aparale nav," and again he burns the cow in front of him. So this must be that. Again, it doesn't say who's burning the cow. Presumably, it's Elazar, or somebody else maybe is burning it in front of him. And so Raves Bisara Vestamal Persha Yisro. Its skin, its flesh, its blood, Al Persha Yisro, with its waist shall we burn. Okay, V'akacha Kohen eitz eretz ve'ezov ushni toas, and the Kohen will take a cedar wood and a hyssop and a crimson thread. We really should be reading this with verses at the end, because that's what the commentary from Moshe Darshan. But you know what? I don't want to do it that way because Rashi was the master teacher. So if he says we first read it this way and then go back to the more homiletic ones, that's what we'll do. Okay, v'chibes begadat hakohen, and the Kohen washes his garments. V'rachatz pitzro b'mayim, he immerses his flesh in water. V'achar yavo ha'machaneh, and afterwards he'll come to the camp. The tamei Kohen out of Arab. And only afterwards can he come to the camp. Rashi says back that we're referring to the camp of the Shlina, meaning say the Kohen who is involved in the ritual acquires a level of ritual impurity that is lower than the ritual that is not as severely impure as the person he purified, but it is a level of impurity nonetheless. Because what is he? He's a tamei mushlach mishulach chutz l'shtei machanot el zav u'bal keri mitzvah. So Rashi tells us there are three types of people who are thrown outside all the camps. Who are those? What does it mean that they have to leave even the camp of the Israelites? That's the leper, the one who has issue from his body, a seminal issue, and the zav. But this person is only excluded from the temple itself, which is called the Machane Shechina. The one who is ritually impure from a dead body is allowed to be in the camp of the Israelites and the camp of the Levites. He just can't go into the camp of the divine presence. And then the Kohen will be tummy until evening. He's tummy until the evening, and then he can enter into the camp. So the one who's involved in the process becomes tamei. One of the reasons for this is, one of my teachers told me, Rabbi Yosef Kanevsky, that a person who is involved in helping others become purified will himself become tamei. Meaning to say, let's say you're a doctor, and the doctor, hello, Elon, how you doing? What are you eating there? Oh, you didn't like the pasta? It's so good. What? Okay, fair enough. So the point is that if you're a doctor and you're treating people who have the flu, there's a likelihood that you're going to get the flu. Or let's say you're a counselor for people who are drug addicts, and you're working with them, and they are disturbed people. I mean, because they're not psychologically healthy. They have an addiction. They're sick. There's a likelihood that you won't be as pure as you were before you started. Because in order to purify that, in order to be a good doctor, you have to touch. You have to have some contact with the people you're healing. In order to be a good counselor, you have to have some contact with the people you're healing. And so that's by necessity going to make you less pure. The purest person cannot be the best teacher, because you have to have a little impurity in order to lower yourself to be able to talk to the students in a way that connects to them. You can't learn from a person who's perfect. You can't relate, right? You can only relate to somebody who somehow is somewhat getting where you're coming from. Ben is a scholar of education.
That's real perfect. I'm just kind of questioning the whole world here.
Yeah, no. I know that you're just being polite, but it's very, very far. I haven't convinced anybody of that, so I don't have to worry about that. But the point is that that's one of the most important principles for people to realize, is that when you want to help people, you have to relate, and then you necessarily aren't as pure anymore. I always told people before they decide they were going to become the president of the synagogue, I always said to them, you do realize that this is going to adversely affect your spirituality, because you're not going to be as pure. You're going to be, I tell my children too. No, I do tell them, yeah, because it's very difficult to be pure in that context. Okay. One who burns it shall wash his garments in water and immerse his flesh in water. And he's done until Erev. We'll just do this last verse and then we'll pray. Hello, Yoav, how you doing? Baruch Hashem. How's the helicopter training? When does that start? Wow. Wow, that's a very dangerous job. So I'll be davening for you. God forbid. Why would you get anything? It's his parents who get. Oh, you're a firefighter also?
But then I told him if I die in the fire, I want him to go buy the customers. I don't know if there's like investing in it. It's like,
God forbid. God forbid. All right. On that note, we're going to stop here. I mean, I don't know how to respond to that, except that I love the spirit of can do spirit of Yoav and Elon, and they're volunteering to serve in the U.S. Armed Forces. Yoav is a hero. He's volunteering to serve. We're very proud to study Torah with him, even if he did come a little late. I know. I love you. I love you.